Let's make Vans old school. Okay, so right off bat, I went for box modeling the basic shape, and honestly, I should have just sculpted it using Dynamesh. I would have hit the main shape and unique curves way quicker, with more control over them, and I would have remashed it anyway, so box modeling it first was pointless, since really the main plus for me in box modeling is the initial control of a nice topology. But the whole point of these videos is for me to learn. I've been really wanting to sculpt a shoe for a long time, and I've actually sketched a few original designs myself, but for some reason I just couldn't bring myself to actually make one, because I knew it's just a level of sculpting I don't have yet. There's all these tricks of getting crease detailed and nice curvy hard surfaces, and I don't know, just too much to handle. But then I started sculpting the Travis Scott action figure for a new video, and I got to his shoes and realized, damn, these are actually Vans Old-Skools. Like, this is a real shoe. How detailed do I want to get here? Like, if I truly try to recreate these shoes, I'm gonna end up spending more time on the shoes than on the figure itself. And then it hit me. This is my chance to finally dive into shoe sculpting for real. So I decided to just give it all I got and make it into its own video. These shoes are relatively simple, at least that's what I thought. So maybe it'll be a good place to start. So yeah, you'll see me struggle to figure out new techniques. You'll see me doing a ton of micro vertex and edge control, a ton of polygroup work. And even though I kept a lot of the struggle in the video, I also cut a lot of it out just so this won't end up being, a 2-hour video. I'm honestly pretty proud of how it came out, and I learned so much, so now I feel comfortable tackling other shoe designs. I hop onto Cinema a lot since I'm much more comfortable there, especially for moving around vertices and edges. Also, while creating the meshes in ZBrush, I end up with some mesh errors, so I use Cinema's Cinema 4D's mesh checking to see some of the errors and correct them. That's all this pink you see. The mesh checking, God, it's a fucking hard word to say, uses different colors to highlight issues with your mesh, like complex points, which are vertices that share more than 4 or 5 edges, non-manifold edges, which are edges that share more than 2 polygons, or bad polygons, which usually means that there are vertices that overlap, so they kind of fold neighboring polygons on top of each other. So yeah, I'm just using the mesh checking to isolate them and fix them, since they will affect the mesh when I subdivide it or when I UV unwrap it. here I forgot to record fixing up the shape of the sole, so I had to bring in all the rest of the shoe parts to fit the new bottom part. The move brush is just godsend. It really was the key player in the sculpt. Another thing I used a lot in this sculpt is creasing, which I never really worked with. Allowed me for so much more control over shaping and grouping and deforming and remeshing everything. Okay, the laces. I couldn't figure out how the fuck you're supposed to tie laces together without struggling with the curve tool for like 2 days. And then I saw people just use Z-spheres for that, which is just brilliant. So here's another new tool that I used for the first time, and it was a pretty smooth ride. You just shape the Z-sphere chain, convert it to a curve, and apply the mesh on the curve. Then use the move topology tool to adjust the mesh around, and you're good to go. I couldn't believe it worked so smoothly. If you like this content and want to support the channel, feel free to check out my Patreon or membership, where you can find these project files, watch these videos with no ads, get free products from the store, as well as other cool perks, but mostly help me make more and better content for y'all. Also, you can buy this model as well as other material and model packs on my new plastic gumroad, as well as prints and pins I made on the pink eye gumroad. And I totally understand that not everyone can support that way, but even subscribing helps the channel, or giving me a follow on Instagram at ojang or the channel at brand new plastic. And if you want to help build a community, share your work, and just fuck around, join our Discord. I'll leave the link in the description. Either way, I really appreciate you. And at this point, of course, sent everything to cinema and UV unwrapped it all. I actually ended up redoing the UVs in a different way, where I tried to keep the islands rectangular so that the islands are not so organic. That seemed to work better with texturing, and it made more efficient UV maps. For the sole, I just ended up drawing the pattern in Illustrator and creating an alpha from it that I used to push the shapes in ZBrush. This looked great in ZBrush, but for some reason it just looked horrible when I exported into a displacement map and textured it in Cinema. I tried my best to figure out why, but I just couldn't figure out why. The displacement map would just come out really wobbly and uneven, even though it looked really even in ZBrush. So off camera, I just ended up manually replacing the sole pattern in the displacement map in Photoshop, which ended up looking much better. For the white parts of the sole, I also just made my own simple pattern and used it as a surface noise, which surprisingly worked really good. I applied it as a noise and then masked that noise and inflated the unmasked part to make the pattern more pronounced. Worked great. And this technique with masking an area and inflating it, or polishing by feature, stuff like that, this is what I was talking about in the Squidward video. Inflating the mesh in a really clean way that doesn't mess up the mesh. So cool to finally be able to handle those techniques. I decided to use Substance Painter instead of my procedural fabric textures, just so I can practice my Substance Painter tricks. And as always, I learned a lot. I knew there's going to be a ton of ID mats work since I had to mask different areas to give different textures, and it was all going pretty well, just using Substance's default linen and nylon textures. But when I added the ID mats, which were just a polygroup used as texture maps, there were all these artifacts at the edges of each mat, and increasing the tolerance helped, but at some point the high tolerance kind of made the mats bleed into each other, and apparently it's because of the anti-aliasing added to the polygroup textures, and as far as I saw, there's no way to turn it off. If you know otherwise, let me know. At first I was really annoyed by it, but I just ended up manually brushing those edges, which worked pretty smoothly. For the right straps, I tried using the leather material, but I didn't really like that leather pattern, so I just ended up making a basic semi-glossy material with some bump noise. I added the stitches in the texture because I didn't want to end up with a ton of stitch polys. This model is fairly low poly, and even though actual stitches will look much better, it's not worth all the extra information. Especially since I'm going to use these shoes on a character. At this point, I went to Cinema to start texturing, and I added some more procedural details like extra bump noise and some extra fuzz and imperfections to the albedo maps. Nothing crazy, just very subtle fine noise. You can see here how the soul came out super wobbly and weird. Like I said, I ended up fixing the displacement map manually in Photoshop. And then I went back to Substance Painter and added a bunch of imperfections like extra bump and dirt and some very subtle creases on the fabric. I didn't want the shoe to feel super dirty, but also I didn't want it to feel brand new. And here you can see how I overlaid some subtle noise over some maps in Octane. And after adjusting the lighting and making sure everything was nice, this is the final results. Yay, we did it. I know I already made the red boots and the Mario shoes, but I don't really consider them as actual shoe sculpting since they were so minimal and cartoony. This is my real, actual, fully detailed, realistic shoe, and I'm super proud and so happy, and I can't fucking wait to do more of these. Yes. Alright, patrons will get access to these project files, but you can also buy this model on my Gumroad, or check out my prints and pins on my other Gumroad, links in the description. And a big hug to all my kick-ass patrons and members you see on the screen right now. I love you, have a great day. Peace.